With several expiring contracts, first-round picks, and more at their disposal, this offseason is going to tell us a lot about how confident the Bulls front office currently is in its current roster. We'll talk a little bit about that, plus we're going to dive into the mailbag. All that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content today, y'all. And I want to start off talking about this. I think like every offseason, right before the draft, like all the in that area going into the draft combine, it's time to really assess where your team really is, right? And I know that the postseason is not ended yet. They still got to get through a couple more rounds of the playoffs, which the Bulls aren't in. Hopefully we can get to that point at some point, right? But, with all the talk about the Bulls being interested or having Vooch and Zach Collins on the trade block, being willing to move off P. Will more than ever before, those type of things. Like, I think that we still got to realize that the Bulls aren't going to make the all-in moves quite yet, unless they're very confident in what they have here, right? And I've seen a lot of Bulls fans like, wait, why are we trying to sign Sharpe? We should be going after XYZ player. And it's like, right now, calculated risk, right? I think this offseason is going to tell us a lot about how this Bulls front off, how confident they are right now in this roster, right? Now, I do think they're going to make some moves, kind of make this roster make more sense, right? We clearly need some defense. I do think they're going to make some moves to get some defense in here. But there's still a lot of unknowns, right? I think, as hype as it is, and as great as it was to watch the way that this Bulls team finished last season, you still got to make sure that is legitimately who your team is, right? I think when you look at a team like the Houston Rockets, for example, right? That was a team that went on a great run last season in 23-24, but they kept that roster mainly the same. They didn't really make any drastic changes to that roster because of a hot stretch at the end of the season, right? And then they came into this season, and they kind of proved who they were. And then there's the flip side of that. A team like the Detroit Pistons last year who were bad, but they made some key acquisitions for some veterans, and they doubled down on the young players that they had there. They brought in a new head coach, and they were able to really, with Cade Cunningham really taking that star-level step, were able to be much further. They avoided the play-in, right? They didn't make it, out of the first round, but they avoided the play-in. I think the Bulls are somewhere between those two places, right? They're going to want to make sure that the way Coby and Giddey finished last season, Matas, right, see another year of development for him as well, right? But they've already kind of made their veteran acquisitions. They brought in Zach Collins. They brought in Kevin Huerter, right? I think you're going to see kind of things that are more in line with that, getting the Paul Reeds or the Day'Ron Sharpes in here, right, to kind of add in some much needed defense to this team that has the offense kind of, where you want it to be at, right? Yeah, you can add some more three-point shooting. You're adding Ayo Dosunmu back as well this offseason after he, didn't finish the season because of injury. I think that's gonna be telling, right? Like how much trepidation this team has around the level of moves that they're willing to make. Now, I think if a team is, if they do see this kind of a more sure thing, if they feel more confident about it, then you can see more moves, right? More kind of not all in, but more in moves, right? Because I think there's still a long way before your all-in type moves start coming, right? So between the rumors of like the Day'Ron Sharpes, the Paul Reeds, the interest in Jonathan Kuminga, right? Those are type of more functional things, right? That are still kind of calculated moves, kind of that's going the direction the Bulls have already chosen, but you're not going to see the crazy. Like, you're not going to see the Domantas Sabonis trades, the Zion Williamson trades, right? Those type of moves that people love to talk about, and I get it, right? I understand it. As fans, we want to see our team make the moves that we look at and we're saying, listen, this team's making this clear move to do this. But I think you're going to see more of those functional signings, and that's perfectly fine where the Bulls are now, right? I think had the Bulls done what they did at the end of the season for the entirety of the season last year, then you see a different level. But the Bulls are still going to have the same assets. They're still going to have the cap flexibility going into the summer of 2026. They're still going to have all their first-round picks. So you don't have to make the all-in thing. Like I've said this many times before, making too many moves just to become a playoff team, going all in into that direction, that could be hugely detrimental, right? You want to have a solid base already. You want to have a base of a playoff team already, and then you want to make the subsequent moves to go further than that, right? And I think that's what this season is going to be about for the Chicago Bulls. And it may not lead to the most exciting offseason, right? But it may lead to the offseason that you need to have to then set yourself up for 2026, right? And make no mistake about it, there still are, like, a Jonathan Kuminga move can still leave you a little bit of flexibility depending on what you're willing to do, so that you could still make another subsequent move in the summer of 2026, right? It depends on a lot of things that are going to be up in air about exactly who and what the Bulls are going to do this offseason. I think the draft positioning makes a lot of that as well. Like where the Bulls are going to draft, who they're going to draft in the draft, where are they going to be selecting at, right? What level of talent they're going to be able to bring in. All those things matter hugely into a case like that as well. And I think those are things that you have to look at. I get it. Like I said before, as fans, we want the moves now. We want it. We don't want to wait. Why are we waiting? Why are we even talking about waiting, right? But as a team that's a front office that has to kind of look at things in totality, you got to kind of watch that. Right now, I will say this, Jonathan Kuminga having 18-point game and then a 30-point game yesterday coming off the bench, even though the Warriors lost. How do you guys feel about a potential Kuminga move now, right? Like I think Kuminga's shown a little bit of exactly why there may be some interest there, not only from the Bulls, but, I think the Heat and the Nets were also teams that were mentioned as interested in Jonathan Kuminga. But you started, look at Kuminga's stat line in a playoff game. 30 points, 11 of 18 from the field, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, right? So, when you see stuff like that, those are the type of moves that if the Bulls do, man, I want to be clear here. I'm not saying that a Jonathan Kuminga move would necessarily work. And we'll see, right? I do think there still are some risk in there. But I tell you what, if the Bulls get a defensive-minded center in this draft, let's say a Thomas Sorber, whoever else it ends up being, I'm starting to think more less and less that Derek Queen is going to fall there. But whoever, name your defensive center, right? Even though Derek Queen isn't necessarily a defensive center. But name your defensive center. You add in, let's say you get that, and then you go after Jonathan Kuminga. You then have a fairly young starting lineup of Giddey, Coby, right? You got Kevin Huerter as the vet there, who's a 28-year-old vet, still not too long in the tooth, right? A 23-year-old Jonathan Kuminga. I said Kevin Huerter. No, Matas Buzelis would be the starting 3 there. Then at 21 years old, right? So you would have that a very young starting lineup, right? And at that point in time, then you're trying to now look at it and say, all right, what is this? You got a year. Let's see what these young guys look like together. And then you can make a swing for a more veteran piece or whatever it is, a restricted free agent, whatever you need at that point in time. And that's what the Bulls are looking at, right? And we'll see, man. This is a time where the Bulls, and I get it as Bulls fans, this team hasn't had a lot of assets over the years. The team hasn't had a lot of flexibility over the years. I think for a lot of people, they still look at it like that. But the Bulls have all their own first-round picks from now until whenever they trade one, right? They have several second-round picks. They have a second-round pick in each of the next years. Some of them aren't their own second-round picks, but they have second-round picks as well. We got upwards of $60 million in cap space this year, which half of that is going to go to Josh Giddey. Another portion of that's going to go to our rookie, whatever it is, right? You have only 5 or 6 players on your roster heading into the summer of 2026, right? So you have a lot of flexibility here. And the Bulls haven't typically been in that place, but that flexibility means nothing if you're not showing at least something on the court. The Giannis trades aren't happening. I've told you guys that before. It's not happening. The Zion trades aren't happening, at least not this offseason, right? And then, so you want to use this year as another year to still compete, right? You want to be trying, like I said before, the goal for this team should be over 500. You won 39 games last year in a season that started off up and down. You moved players. You should be aiming for at least 41 wins this season, ideally 42 wins this season. If you then are riding into the summer of 2026 with a roster that's around the average age of 23, 24-ish, with tons of cap flexibility, all your own first-round picks, a young core, that's where you can start maneuvering and making some moves. And let's hope that the Bulls do that. And, we'll see, right? And a lot hinges on the draft this year and how we compete next season and how players in Josh Giddey, Coby, Matas continue to grow. And I think that's a decent place to be in when you look at where we were. And I think sometimes people forget that where we were at this time last year was a team with an aging roster that AK would have loved to keep DeMar DeRozan had he been able to move. Like, we could be having DeMar still here, right? If he was able to move Zach last offseason, we would have DeMar still here and probably not have the first round picks outright that we had. So we've made those changes. Like, they gotta show that they can bring this home, and we'll see what they can end up doing. But with that said, it is Sunday. That means it is mailbag day around here. Let's get into these voicemails, man. We got some really good ones today. This one's from Mello.
What's going on, Hayes? This is Mello. Just had a quick question for you. Just want to get your opinion on something. Now, with the draft, with a lottery coming up, say the Bulls end up getting a little bit higher than 12. And the two best players available at that point, excuse me, the two best players at that point is Rasheed Fleming and the center from Georgetown. I think his name is Thomas Sorber. I like both of them, and I know you like both. But if it came down to having to choose between one of those two, which one would you take and why? Just want to get your opinion on it. Me personally, I like the Fleming kid. I think him and Matas will play really well together, but I feel the same way about Sorber and what he can add to the team. But I just want to get your opinion. All right. Too bad.
All right, so the Bulls will either be top 4 or they'll be 12th or lower, right? So I don't think the Bulls, they can't only move up a couple of spots. It's either in the top 4, meaning you've won one of the top 4 spots in the lottery, or a team has leapfrogged you in the lottery and you've moved down 1 or 2 spots, or the most likely scenario, 85%, you stay there at number 12, right? But I do think that either Sorber or Fleming can still be there at number 12 for the Chicago Bulls. But let's say both are on the board. That's a really good question because I love both these guys for it's kind of the same reasons in a lot of ways, right? They both bring their defensive upside is the biggest upside that they have, right? Thomas Sorber, of course, is kind of more of a straightforward center with a 6'10". I believe he has a 7'2"-ish wingspan. Rasheed Fleming as well has a 7'5" wingspan and being a little bit shorter at 6'9", 6'8", depending on that size and what you read there, right? So these are both guys that are kind of undersized to a degree, right? I do think that Thomas Sorber has more advanced post moves, and I think that he has that defensive anchor type game where Rasheed Fleming is a really good defensive player too. I'm not saying that Rasheed Fleming isn't amazing defensively, but I think he has more of that. I think Sorber has more of the defensive anchor type center game, whereas Rasheed Fleming has more of the really good defense. He has shot blocking, he can guard multiple positions, right? But it's more kind of that perimeter, right? And he has also more 3-point shooting upside. Rasheed Fleming shapes up to kind of be a 3-and-D big if he hits all of his potential, right? So I like both of these guys. And like I said, a lot of the same ways. I think Rasheed has more offensive upside as far as spacing, and Thomas Sorber has more offensive upside as far as kind of traditional big man, lob threat, those type of things type game. I think that's where you're kind of looking at the overlap there, right? And I think that's what it leaves down to the volume of it. And I think Rasheed Fleming also is a better pairing kind of with Matas Buzelis more naturally as that 4. He gets, and one of the questions that people have for him is is his best position going to end up being 5? I think that's something you got to wait and see and look out for, right? And I like both those guys honestly, and I know this isn't either one of these guys. I really think you can't go wrong at number 12. If it's at number 12. I don't think you can go wrong at personally. I think both these guys can have similar upsides. Of course, Thomas Sorber is younger, right? So if you're looking for that, he's younger. But I think Rasheed Fleming has that type of game you really look at. And he doesn't really create for himself, but neither does Sorber either when it comes down to it. But the back to the basket, if Fleming's best position ends up being center, he doesn't have that kind of back to the basket game, whereas Sorber does have that. So it really comes down to how you look at those things, how you weigh those two things, and I think you look at their floor. I think if I'm playing it safe, I think Rasheed has the higher floor, whereas Thomas Sorber still has a high floor, not as high as Fleming's, but way higher potential or a higher ceiling overall, right? And that's what it comes down to, at least in my opinion, right? But we'll get into draft breakdown. We'll be breaking them down a little bit more going forward as well. All right, let's get into the next one, man. This one's from TJ.
Yo, what's up, hey? It's TJ from the low end. Yeah, I fucking love your mailbag episodes. They be having you cracking up. What's supposed to say? I think his name Shay. Every time he say, "I know what you're thinking," I shit you not. He says the most outlandish "what the fuck" shit I've ever heard. I'm not gonna lie. What was the last thing he had said? I think he had said something about Io DeSumo being like either a superstar or all-star. I don't really remember. But I shit you not, bro. I heard that. I was like, huh? What? But yeah, bro. Everything else he said, I more or less agree with about, yeah, we can most definitely keep Io and Coby. And that, I feel like that's probably what the Bulls are looking to do. But now to my voicemail. Man, I want to live in dreamland for a little bit. I need to get my spirits up with the BS we had experienced last season, but I want to know, what would your plan be if you was in AK's position and you did get the number one draft pick? I know it's only like a 1.2% chance, and I heard that, we had got D Rose on the same odds. But how would you, change the team to best suit our new young core of, I would assume it would be Matas, Coby, Giddey, and, Cooper Flagg. Would you also, what position would you want him to play? Especially since we got Matas on the team. Would you want him to be the 5? Or would you prefer he be like the 4, Matas could be the 3, and then we could get again, Dreamland, say we get like a Miles Turner or some other, good floor stretching big man. Say, just let me hear your thoughts, man. All right, man. Stay blessed, Bulls Nation and the Chicago Bulls Central family. Peace.
First of all, Shay is a character. Shay is hilarious because Shay be arguing things that nobody said. Like, every time he says that, I know what you're thinking. You already know. Nobody's thinking is about to come out of his mouth. But that's my little brother. I love Shay, man. But if we got the number one pick, right, to answer your question, I'm going to lay it out for you. If we get the number one pick and draft Cooper Flagg, I am then moving a combination of Vooch, Jalen Smith, Javon Carter, P. Will, Lonzo Ball. Those 5 players. I'm moving a combination of those 5 players. And the goal is I'm not worried necessarily about what I get back. I'm more so trying to create more cap flexibility this offseason, right? If you can move Vooch, Jalen Smith, Javon Carter, P. Will, or Lonzo Ball, and you can not take back all that salary back, right? So meaning that maybe you're getting an expiring deal. Maybe you're getting players back that can flesh out the back of your bench, but you're not paying them as much. No long-term money in that, right? I'm trying to create, between moving those 5 players, I'm trying to create an additional $10 to $15 million in cap space, right? Get back seconds, get back whatever you want. I'm fine. If P.O. goes on to excel for another team and all we got back was a low first-round pick or 3 second-round picks, I'm fine with that, and here's why. We got Cooper Flagg, who's going to be we already know what he can be defensively, but then I'm putting money on trying to get Miles Turner this offseason. I'm using the additional money that we saved to put money on Miles Turner. At that point, you then have a starting 5 of Josh Giddey, Coby White, Matas Buzelis, Cooper Flagg, Miles Turner. That's a nice balance of offense, defense in that starting lineup that you have there. You then have a bench unit of Io DeSumo. I'm also bringing back Trey Jones in that case. Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins as your main players coming off the bench. I like that bench. It's a solid bench enough as well. That's a team. I'm not saying they're going to win the East or anything like that, not in year 1 of Cooper Flagg and year 2 of Matas Buzelis, but then that is a team that I think is competing in the Eastern Conference. They're going to be a top 6 seed, avoid that play-in, and then at that point in time, you have a nice mix of veteran leadership as well as youth that still can develop on your roster. So as Miles Turner deal declines, you then have Matas and Cooper Flagg coming into their own, right? You have a Josh Giddey that's managed with those guys as well. I like that. If we get lucky and get the number 1 overall pick, I'm moving the guys that we're trying to move. I'm moving those guys. I don't care what we get back. Let's create some cap space. Let's get a little bit more assets, whether it's second round picks, low first, whatever it is, and then let's put the chips on the table. Go out there and try to get a free agent in Miles Turner this year, and then let's keep it pushing. And at the minimum, if you don't get Miles Turner back, that's fine, right? If Miles Turner isn't leaving, you can't get him in free agency, cool, right? Now I'm switching. Let's go ahead and sign the Day'Ron Sharpes, the Paul Reeds, right? Let's get some defensive depth in here to where, all right, then the re-up in 2026 plan is still in gear. At that point, you'll be year 2 of Cooper Flagg going into year 3 of Matas Buzelis. People are going to want to come play with that. I think that's what you're trying to do at that point in time. That's my thought process, at least. All right, let's move into the next one, man. This one's from Corn.
What it don't do, King Drip, it's your brother Corn. First of all, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. Blessings to the queens. Now, let's get right into this. All right. I want to talk about something interesting. Now, this could be just some bullshit. That's why I want to talk to you about it, because you could call out the bullshit. I'm hearing talks about Ace Bailey slipping. Now, I know we want center, right? I know we want a big. Now, this is maybe my PTSD Shadur Sanders post-draft going on, right? My instincts going on, right? But what do you think is the issue and why Ace Bailey, in some eyes, is now slipping down the draft board? To me, he's A1. You know, I always thought it was him, Dylan Harper, and Cooper Flagg, but now it looks like he's kind of sliding down a bit. And then I may ask this to you. And like I said, this could be all bullshit or whatever. Call it out as it is. If there's a chance that Ace Bailey can fall to us, would we take a chance on that? Or I'm asking you, would you take a chance on an Ace Bailey, or would you stick to your guns and pick a big, you know? Any of these great bigs is coming out, because like I said, this is a deep draft, and I want a center, but I am thinking in a way, like I said, PTSD Shadur Sanders thinking, there's no way in hell that kid should have fell down to the 5th round. That's another conversation for another day. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of hearing the same talk about Ace Bailey. And if there's a chance that kid slipped down to us, whatever we pick up in the draft, because I know we ain't going to get top 4 or 5, you know. But is there a chance of Ace Bailey slipping, man? Because that's the talk. It's kind of weird, but it is what it is. Again, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Blessings for y'all. Won't none of us be here if it wasn't for you. All right, C-Red. Blessings.
There's zero chance Ace falls past number 5. When they say that Ace is falling, they mean in the sense that he was once looked at as one of the top 3 picks, and now he may not be that. But I don't think Ace is definitely not falling to number 12. I think the lowest he goes is 5, maybe 6. He's not getting past that, right? So he's not dropping that low. So I think that's the key thing here. I'm not even going to let myself start thinking of the scenarios that Ace Bailey's on the board at 12. He's not going to have a Shadur Sanders type fall. When they say that, they just mean fall out the top 3. He's a guy that's been commonly thought to go top 3 literally since the start of the season. And I think that that's something that's starting to change. I don't think it's really any knock on him. I think it's more so that I think people are getting higher on VJ. I think that he's really growing a lot. And I think that's really what it comes down to. VJ and Trey Johnson are 2 players that I think could definitely rise, but Ace Bailey's not falling past number 5, number 6 at the lowest. I don't think that's happening. So no, I'm not even going to walk into the scenarios of him possibly being there for the Chicago Bulls. I'm not even comparing it to Shadur Sanders, because it's still not that. It's not going to be nearly comparable to that, right? So that's the thing I think you have to look at. So, but hey, I understand, like, looking at it, and once the combine starts too and the 5-on-5 drills start, I think he's going to be right back up there as well. So I think he's still going to be around 4 when it comes down to it, with a chance of still being the number 3. But all right, let's move into the next one, man. This one's from Shay.
What's up, Hayes? How you doing, man? Look, I know a lot of people want Nikola Vucevic trade. I know AK wanted a first-round pick. And, hey, you're right. We should have looked for a first-round pick and traded Nikola Vucevic while the season was going on. But at the same time, let's think about this for a second. I don't think we're going to get a first-round pick for Nikola Vucevic. Now, look, I know he's productive and all that, but you have to look at it. Nikola Vucevic is, if I'm not mistaken, 35, going on 36 next season. He's on the decline of his career, and on top of that, he's a big man. And big man don't hold up with good knees for that long. Unless maybe you're Al Horford, and even then, even with the production, his age plays a big factor. So the way I see it, I'd say we just get 2 second round. Look to get 2 second or 3 second round picks for him, because the way I see it, that age does play a big factor into it, and I don't believe that a team will look to give a first round pick for a man that's in his mid 30s. Now look, I know people gonna say, "Oh, he's productive," and all that, and that's true. But you have to also have to take in consideration his age. Now I know a lot of people may think in the past, hey, Shay, you was a Nikola Vucevic supporter, but I could see the writing on the wall. I don't think Nikola Vucevic. I don't think he fits on the team. The team is trying to get more younger. Now, he would be a good veteran piece, but I feel like, man, I think he'll do better and more productive on a team that's trying to win at this point. And I think he really wants to win at this point. I believe that we should at least try to get second-round picks at the most, because I don't believe no team's going to give us a first-round pick for no guy that's on the tail end of his career. But, hey, I could be wrong. Anyway, tell me what you think, Hayes. Peace.
Vooch's age does play a factor, make no mistake about it, but I also think it depends on who you're trading him for or trading him to. Because if you're trading him to a team that is already basically a contender, right, a la the Golden State Warriors or whatever, and their pick is probably going to be low 20s, I think you can get a first-round pick. But I agree with you. The most likely scenario is you're probably getting a couple of seconds, and I think that's fine. I think that's perfectly fine with where Vooch is at that point in time. The Bulls, it's clear that he doesn't fit the Bulls' needs as well. So I think that also is going to affect the trade market there. So I think a couple of seconds is most likely what you're going to get back for Nikola Vucevic, and I think that's perfectly fine at this point. I think you're more so looking at creating more kind of symmetry in what you have here, and I think Vooch also is ready to get out of here, and I think that's the thing that's kind of the most telling in that. I don't think you're really looking to kind of break the bank or anything in what you get back for Nikola Vucevic. I think at this point, trying to get back where you can, free up some minutes and things like that, and it is what it is. Vooch is still a very productive big man, and like I said, I think Bulls fans look for him to be something he was never going to be. And if you have a team that already has that defensive base, I don't think they're necessarily going to be looking at that. So there you go. All right, let's get into the last one, man. This one's from Reggie.
Hey, this is Reginald. Just calling on your latest video about P. Will, front office ultimatum, about him stepping up, and it's all on him. But I think he's mentally checked out. We've seen the difference between him year to year. 2 years ago, he was like your third best defensive player. Him, Alex Caruso, and Iota Sumo. Now, I mean, he was almost unplayable because he wasn't giving you anything on offense or defense. And I know a lot of Bull fans are going to say we should just trade him. The only way to get off his contract is to package him with someone like Vooch and Javon Carter and send him to a team like Phoenix to get Bradley Beal, assuming he waives his no trade clause. And even then, you're going to have to take more money back than what you're sending out just to get off of T-Will's contract. If the Bulls have put themselves in a terrible, no, I'm not going to say the Bulls specifically. I will say AK specifically put this team in a terrible position with P-Will's contract. Because I don't even remember anyone saying that P-Will was targeted by another team for like some big extension or something. Because I doubt he would got offered more than like 15 per 3 years max. I mean, it's just hard to watch AK keep putting his team in a bad position, all because he overestimates the guys he brought in. He drafted people, but it was clearly a bad overestimation on what he was capable of doing. And as for a lot of Bulls fans who are just saying You know, well, what about Zion? What about Giannis? What about whoever else you want to throw out there? Unless, you know, AK is smart enough to be a part of like a 3-team deal where they can get off his contract in one of those big superstar trades, which I doubt he can because he hasn't shown me that he can. You know, P. Will's going to be on this team next year. But, maybe you got a different opinion. Love to hear about it. Thanks for hearing me out.
There's about zero chance you're moving P. Will without giving up a draft pick at this point. Even packaging him with Vooch, that's $40 million, right? That's going to be very hard for a team to swallow. At that point, you're then talking about, and then you said with Javon, if you package him with Javon, that's a 12-pack of ass, right? Packaging P. Will with Javon Carter is a 12-pack of cheeks. Who's going to want that, right? So no, you're not even getting, and I think people misalign the Bradley Beal thing. There were teams that actually did want Bradley Beal, right? So it's not like they're just trying to dump off Bradley Beal. Like, if they do trade Beal, there are going to be teams that are interested in Bradley Beal because I think they're going to look at what he can bring when he's out there with some actual, point guards, right? And not trying to force to do something else. So I don't think the Bulls are moving P. Will back for what you said. And I think either way, like I said, you're not moving P. Will without giving something up at this point. So he's going to be here for the Bulls on the back end of the bench for a while. I think the best the Bulls can do is him just not being in the rotation. It sucks. That's what you paid him. But that was the risk of signing him for that money. You brought in 3 developmental coaches, and this is where you sit at. It is what it is. Comedy of errors, man. But that's my time for today. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.